Approximately 25,000 law enforcement personnel will be on hand to provide security for the inauguration of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump in Washington today. Around the U.S. Capitol and White House, there is a noticeable police presence with steel fences blocking off large parts of the city. Meanwhile, Trump is claiming responsibility for the ceasefire deal in Gaza. It's clear he's been willing to intervene in foreign affairs even before officially retaking office. His new administration is vowing to end wars in Europe and the Middle East, yet it will still have to contend with major geopolitical hurdles. SABC News correspondent Benji Haya has this report on what Trump administrations mean on the global stage.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
Donald Trump, exactly 8 years ago, laying out his worldview. Will it be the same this time round? On Ukraine, he had pledged to end the conflict in a single day, though he's not said how, besides suggesting that a negotiated settlement is the way forward. His government may decide to reduce, pause, or even reverse US military aid, or make it conditional on Ukraine participating in talks. The incoming president wants NATO members to spend 5% of their GDP on defence. That's more than double the alliance's current target. But whilst he demands a boost in funding, he's also threatening to annex the territory of some of NATO's own member states. Donald Trump, ever the unconventionalist, has expressed a desire to buy Canada and, perhaps through military force, seize the Danish province of Greenland, insisting the US needs the island for national security purposes.
Trump's also just a lot more unpredictable. Biden and, for that matter, most presidents, certainly most Democratic presidents, have had a pretty common thread of things to do. Trump is different, even different from past Republican presidents, in that, what he wants and what matters to him not only can change from, week to week, month to month, but also is not always consistent with some kind of, vision of what the U.S. position should be overseas.
One thing that has remained consistent is Donald Trump's staunch support for Israel in its 15-month offensive against Hamas. He believes that this weekend's ceasefire agreement happened as a result of his recent election victory. The president-elect's laid out a grand diplomatic agenda in the Middle East, one that includes building upon the 2020 Abraham Accords, when two Gulf nations normalized relations with Israel. Morocco and Sudan were later signatories to that pact.
I'm greatly honored to host this lunch, to be joined by the leaders of Cote d'Ivoire, Ethiopia, Ghana, Guinea, Namibia, Nigeria, Senegal, Uganda, and South Africa.
Despite Donald Trump in the past referring to African countries in a disparaging manner, using a derogatory expression to describe the continent, his first term did see the birth of initiatives such as Prosper Africa, aimed at facilitating economic engagement. And he may be forced to engage again in a bid to counter Chinese influence on African soil. But Linda Thomas-Greenfield, who served as the US Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs for 4 years, is downplaying the threat of competition with China in Africa. She believes America should play to its strengths to fend off its superpower rival.
There's not a single country in Africa that does not have a significant diaspora here in the United States, American citizens who are part of influencing our power. That's not happening in China, and it ain't happening in Russia. It only happens here in the United States, and that's our superpower when it comes to the continent of Africa.
In just a few days' time, Donald Trump will be back in the Oval Office. He's promising to focus on issues here at home. No new wars, he says, a non-interventionist presidency. Yet in reality, he is offering an increasingly expansionist approach, and he'll have his hands full as he tackles a raft of challenges the world over. Benji Haya, SABC News, Washington.
Well, it certainly isn't a couple of days. It's today that the US President-elect Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 47th president to hold office, and officials expect nearly 250,000 ticketed guests to descend the United States capital, Washington, D.C., to witness Trump and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance take the oath of office on the same day the nation marks the Martin Luther King Jr. federal holiday. These are live visuals coming out of Washington as, of course, it prepares for that inauguration. And so is Sherwin Bryce-Pease preparing for that inauguration. Sherwin, good morning. Well, good morning from us. Good evening to you. It's certainly going to be one of the world's greatest comebacks in politics ever. We've all described that as it, but the moment is about to happen in a couple of hours' time. Talk to us about the mood, what's expected, and what lies ahead for us in Washington, D.C.
Well, good morning to you, Leanne, and good morning to the viewers. I think the only thing that is really seeking to undermine this sweeping comeback by the 45th and now the soon-to-be 47th president of the United States is the weather. It is going to be a low of minus 11 degrees Celsius overnight in Washington, D.C., and it will only get up to about -5, around -4 at the hottest part of the day. And so, the big news is, of course, that they've moved this inauguration from the steps of the U.S. Capitol inside the Capitol Rotunda. So when you talk about the 220,000 plus ticketed guests that had been invited, essentially, Donald Trump fans from around the country descending on Washington, D.C., it's unlikely that they're all going to show up at the Washington Mall, just given how cold it is going to be overnight and into tomorrow here. Monday, essentially, what you are expecting is thousands of his supporters to descend, a strong police and security contingent. But it certainly isn't going to underestimate or undermine what is, as you correctly point out, a sweeping political comeback. This was someone on the back foot just 4 years ago, losing that 2020 election, refusing to concede. Don't also underestimate the symbolism here, right? Essentially, the Congress that was invaded by his supporters after he didn't want to concede to Biden is essentially now the background, right? The landscape for his swearing in today. So certainly a huge political comeback, a sweeping election victory. This was someone that was almost assassinated during the campaign. This is someone that was twice impeached during his first term. This was someone that faced a great deal of legal jeopardy, including a 34-count felony conviction. So when Donald Trump takes the oath of office, Leanne, later today, as the 47th president, that he'll become the first convicted felon to do so. And then I think in addition to that, expect a muscular approach here. He's already talking about enacting almost 100 executive orders in the first hours of his inauguration. So expect him to give a very muscular, powerful speech about all the changes that are going to come under his administration, and no less his signature to almost 100 executive orders within the hours after taking the oath of office tomorrow.
Yeah, certainly. This is nothing short of something that's going to be one that's going to captivate everybody as we watch and wait and see what the Trump presidency has up his sleeves. But let's talk about some of the guests that have been invited to this inauguration. This has been a topic of discussion that we've been seeing taking place quite a while. We know that our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, was not on the invite list, but then again, this is nothing new. I mean, I don't know if our presidents, besides Mandela, have been invited before, but some interesting characters. We even believe that the UK Prime Minister was not invited to the inauguration. Perhaps you can give us a little bit more about this.
Well, I saw the coverage in South African media about President Cyril Ramaphosa not being invited here, but that's certainly not news because it doesn't generally happen.
Yeah.
It's not customary that heads of state from around the world get invited to a U.S. Presidential inauguration. But there were some invites sent by Donald Trump because he's, change agent. He doesn't do as others have done before him. And so that might be tradition. Donald Trump's intention is certainly always to upend tradition. There were a number of heads of state and government invited. Argentina's president is invited. He's likely to attend. Italy's prime minister wasn't sure if she could make it, but was invited. China's President Xi Jinping, of course, we all know he was invited, but will not attend. We understand he and Donald Trump have already spoken. Ecuador's president is invited. El Salvador's president, former president of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, is invited. The Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, was invited, but also will not be attending. But yeah, Donald Trump obviously reaching out to individuals, former presidents, current presidents that have a good relationship with him, presidents that believe in and believe in his right-wing ideologies, America First perspective, because they apply similar perspectives and ideologies in their own jurisdictions. But I do think it's a bit of a non-story to say that President Cyril Ramaphosa wasn't invited when that generally is not the trend here.
Yeah, indeed. Glad you emphasized that, because I was also giggling while I was reading that as a story, which really isn't a story going forward. Sherwin, thank you. Go to bed. You've got a big day ahead of you, and we're looking really forward to your coverage as we bring that inauguration to the South African viewers as it takes place this evening. But you go get some sleep before that, of course, all happens.